A gentle drizzle coats the train window as the Central European landscape rushes by. Another small town radiating outward from a Gothic church and town hall shrinks into the distance. Now, acres of farmland, wheat, barley, hops, whiz by your eye line. You smile. It can't be long now. You take a last look at the sketch you've been working on, then close your notebook and pack it safely into the front pocket of your backpack. You fold up the tray table and recline backward in your seat, letting the pleasant jostling of the train's movement comfort and soothe you. It's been a quiet ride from Vienna. The few other passengers in your car took advantage of the calm to sneak in an early afternoon nap or reading session, like the young man sitting across the aisle from you. You couldn't help but squint to make out the title of his reading material, as you're always looking for new books to try out. It was called Too Loud a Solitude. You made a note in your sketchbook next to a sketch of St. Stephen's in Vienna. It might be worth a read. A stoic conductor makes his way down the aisle, offering a few words in German, then Czech, then English. You'll be arriving in just a few minutes, he explains, and reminds all passengers to check that they have all their belongings. You lean your forehead against the glass of the train window, and ahead, refracted through the tiny droplets of rain, you can see the horizon of farmland slowly transition to suburb, industrial buildings, and age-old residences staggered with mighty hills and slopes. Prague awaits. Your last visit to the city was years ago, while you were still in school. A study tour that immersed you in the language, literature, and architecture of the Czech lands and their capital city. Fragments of the trip have returned to you slowly, like dreams, in these last few months. You think fondly of a visit to the Lenin Wall, a crowd-sourced memorial tucked away on quiet Kampa Island. A wall layered with images and messages of love, peace, and music. An ever-changing, everlasting monument to the beloved Beatle John Lennon. It's never the same sight twice. And it's the only place in Prague where graffiti is not only allowed, but encouraged. As you reminisce, a half-remembered lyric floats quietly through the tunnels of your mind. Something about a tree and dreams and living with eyes closed. Outside the train window, a formidable equestrian statue tops a thickly forested hill. Below, the city of red roofs and Gothic spires materializes, nestled in the bend of her mother river. The rain outside seems to be thinning to vaporous mist in the gauzy afternoon sun. The train trundles round and through municipal parks and commercial veins, offering glimpses of Romanesque, medieval, brutalist, and neo-Gothic architecture before pulling into the Art Nouveau Hlavní nádraží, Prague's main railway station. As you disembark the train, a familiar fragrance fills your nostrils, the scent of Prague. It's so sweet, so specific, so nostalgic, and yet beyond description. Is it the honey-sweet perfume of the linden trees carried on a summer breeze? The roasty spices of pastry stalls in the city center? Whatever it is, you take the scent in contentedly, welcoming the rush of memories that accompany it. You check your watch and are pleased to see that there's plenty of time to reach your rental apartment and freshen up before meeting up with a tour group in Wenceslas Square. It's more than a short walk to your accommodations in the Vinohradye district of the city. But after a few hours on the train, you feel energized and excited to walk the cobbled streets of Prague. You took great pains to fit all your belongings for this trip into a lightweight backpack to allow for just this kind of opportunity. The walk takes you past the National Museum, a stunning neo-Renaissance building, and the charming Náměstí Míru, or Peace Square, which hosts a lovely market under the towers of the Church of St. Ludmila. You stop to purchase a ripe golden apple to enjoy as you walk through the square. A few labyrinthine twists and turns lead you at last to the apartment, tucked away in a quiet courtyard. The ground floor hosts a little coffee shop, and you make a mental note of the food menu. This will make a perfect stop for breakfast in the morning. A ginger cat snoozes in the flower bed outside the coffee shop's open window. She raises one eyelid as she senses you're passing, then closes it again. Your lodgings are on the third and topmost floor, up a sturdy wooden staircase. You follow the instructions to open the lockbox, then turn the hefty brass key in the lock and enter the space. The apartment is even more luxe than the listing suggested. Spanning the entirety of the third floor, it's beautifully appointed with a mixture of eclectic styles. You drop your bag on the floor and start to get your bearings. Before anything, you head to the large window that faces out toward the city. It provides you a unique, wide view from which you can see the Church of St. Ludmila, the National Museum, and even the distant and green Letna Park, which hangs over the city and the river. There's a distinct old-world charm to the apartment, despite its evident updates and renovations. It retains thick, exposed wood beams across the ceiling, and you discover that the beams in the airy bedroom are carved with hand-etched floral patterns. With the rain past, you look forward to opening the windows tonight to allow in a sweet-smelling summer breeze. Photography prints hang throughout the apartment, depicting architectural details from significant city landmarks: Saint Vitus Cathedral, the Old Town Hall, the Royal Ball Court. With just over an hour before your walking tour, you unpack a few essentials and hop into the shower to refresh after the long train ride. As you stand under the waterfall showerhead, you feel the warm steam opening your pores. The eucalyptus-scented cleanser clears your airways. With every drop of water and every exhale, your muscles loosen and relax after the stillness and cramps of the journey. After drying off, you feel a complete reset. Lying down for just a moment on the plush duvet of the bed, you briefly consider foregoing the walking tour. After all, you've been here before, albeit many years ago. And an afternoon nap sounds especially luxurious after the pleasant shower. But with some effort, you manage to lift yourself from the comfort of the bed, pack up your keys, wallet, and notebook, and head for the rendezvous point. As you pass through the courtyard and by the coffee shop downstairs, you notice the ginger cat has moved from the window flower bed and onto the cobbled sidewalk, where she quietly bathes herself. She chirps as you walk by and follows you for a few steps before becoming distracted by a gaggle of English sparrows arguing over a crumb of pastry in the street. You retrace many of your steps, past the market in Náměstí Míru and the National Museum, but turn toward the city center rather than the train station. The meeting point for the walking tour is the equestrian statue of Saint Wenceslas in Václavské náměstí, or Wenceslas Square. You find the tour guide easily. She holds a colorful umbrella bearing the name of the tour company over her shoulder. She smiles and greets you with a heavy Czech accent and beckons you to join the handful of people already riffling through their guidebooks or conversing about the pleasant change in the weather. At a few minutes past the hour, the guide gathers the dozen or so tourists into a circle and introduces herself as Viktorka, a graduate student from Brno, studying history here in Prague. In today's tour, she explains, you'll explore the historic city center, learning about the tumultuous history and fascinating legends of the Czech capital. And there's no better place to begin to that end than here, at the foot of the statue of Saint Wenceslas, or Svatý Václav, as he's known by his people. He is, as Viktorka explains, the good King Wenceslas from the Christmas Carol. And at this, an older English couple let out a sigh of recognition and exchange an amused glance. Though Wenceslas was certainly a real person, Viktorka continues, his history is mixed and muddled with myth and legend, making him in a way analogous to King Arthur of the Britons. He lived and served as duke in the 10th century and became a patron saint of Bohemia after his martyrdom. According to legend, an army of loyal knights sleep to this day under Mount Blanik, and in the country's hour of need, this very statue of Saint Wenceslas will spring to life, rouse the sleeping soldiers, and march forth. In this same legend, the charging Duke will cross the Charles Bridge, an important stop on today's tour, trip upon a loose stone, and reveal the magic sword of Brunswick. Wenceslas will wield this legendary sword in the defense of his country and people. As Victorka weaves history and legend, you gaze at the face of the statue of St. Wenceslas. The story does remind you of King Arthur and many other kings under the mountain, resting as they await their people's cry of need. You imagine the statue's face twitching, softening, and stirring into an expression of power and devotion. You picture the horse upon which St. Wenceslas sits, shaking its head, releasing centuries of stupor to carry on hence. What a sight that would be. The fantasy hums and thrums through your mind until you realize that the tour group is moving on, traveling together down the bustling Wenceslas Square. You leap to catch up. As you walk downhill through the enormous boulevard, Victorka points out significant sights. The square is rich with revolutionary history and 20th century landmarks disguised among unassuming commercial outlets. Victorka explains that Wenceslas Square is part of Prague's new town, though new is relative, as the area was constructed under King Charles IV in the 14th century. You'll now pass through the Powder Gate into the Old Town, much of which reaches back to the 12th century and earlier. The path you'll walk, she explains, is known as the Royal Way, the traditional coronation route for Bohemian monarchs. It begins in Republic Square, the old royal court, passes through the Old Town, across the Charles Bridge, and up to the magnificent Prague Castle. If your tour group can time it just right, she says, you should be able to catch the sunset from Charles Bridge. A titter of approval passes through the members of the group. The pedestrian corridor of Celetna Street is packed to the gills with tourists and lined with souvenir shops. Victorka moves swiftly, raising her umbrella overhead to keep the group together. When you reach the sprawling Old Town Square, she finds an open space to gather the group and point out more important landmarks. There's the towering church of Our Lady Before Teen, its spires hanging over the square like a Gothic cactus. At the center of the square, there's a monument to the reformer Jan Hus and his followers. A dynamic, commanding bronze sculpture depicts Hus himself, standing tall, appearing to emerge organically from the plinth. Surrounding him are warriors of his cause and the victorious Czech people. One clutches a chalice. The sculpture is rich and full of movement. Your gaze fixes on the outstretched hand of one of Hus's followers, curled into a vital and energetic position. With great emotion, Victorka tells the stories of the Hussite Wars and the centuries-long struggle of the Czech people for freedom of religion, language, and country. This square is, in fact, a great stage for many of the events of Hus's revolution, full of tragedy and triumph. Victorka looks at her watch and ushers you across the square, where a large crowd appears to be gathering. It's almost time, she says, for the astronomical clock to put on its hourly show. You and your tour companions wait with bated breath, staring up at the breathtaking clock with its intricate face and complications. There are hands that tell the time of day, of course, but the face also features an astrolabe, which indicates the Earth's position, the times of sunrise and sunset, and even the phase of the zodiac. The buzz of the crowd grows stronger as the hour grows closer. Victorka quietly instructs you and your tour group to direct your gaze to the figure of a skeleton, which stands on a plinth to the right of the ornate clock face. In one hand, the skeleton holds a little bell. As soon as you lock focus onto it, the hand begins to move mechanically up and down, ringing the tiny bell. You hear gasps of surprise and delight from the onlookers. Then, above the clock face, two small windows open, and the carved, marionette-like faces of the apostles parade by the window, hands outstretched in gestures of blessing. The skeleton continues to ring his bell. The chime of it hangs on your ears with a gentle hum, and you feel a curious kind of prickling at the back of your neck and shoulders, as if a cool breeze has unexpectedly fluttered by. For a few moments, the hum is all you can hear, its warm tone surrounding you as the laughter and chatter of the crowd fades into the background. And for just those few moments, you have a peculiar feeling of separation from the crowd, as though you stand on the edge of a humming string, a shining golden tightrope of musical frequency far above them all. And from this hovering height, you can see into the eyes of the saintly statues that rotate into the windows of the clock tower, and you can almost hear their muttered prayers. Then in an instant, you return to the cobblestones, and the humming subsides. The crowd is cheering and dispersing, and the clock is still and silent once more. Victorka leads you onward through the labyrinth of alleyways and pedestrian streets, but your head still tingles and thrums. You travel down Karlova Street, another picturesque, shop-lined corridor that's rich with the warm scent of cinnamon from the pastry stalls. This street, Victorka explains, leads directly to the Charles Bridge. You follow her bouncing umbrella through the throngs of tourists. But before you can reach the end of the winding way, you begin to hear the humming again, as though it's followed you from the astronomical clock. A moment later, the cool prickling at your neck returns. You're filled now with an insatiable curiosity, and you search the street with your eyes and ears to locate the source of the sensation. And there, do you see something, or is it just in your mind? There's a passageway into a courtyard off the road. From within, in the dimming light of the late afternoon, you could swear you can see a faint, misty, orange glow. It's somehow different in quality to lamplight. The light is almost liquid, and yet no one else seems to notice it. You turn back to Victorka's umbrella. She and the tour group are only a few paces ahead. You could catch up if you want to. But the urge to investigate the simmering glow is irresistible. So you follow the light. As soon as you step through the archway into the courtyard, your ears fill once again with the warm hum. It seems to vibrate quietly with every part of your body and soul, filling up the senses. It sounds like a drop of honey in the throat. It feels like the music of the movement of celestial bodies. It wraps around you like a comforting blanket or warm water. At the other end of the courtyard, you can see a dark green door. From underneath it, more of that mellow Titian light glows and, distinctly, flickers. With the sensation of gliding across the cobblestones, you move toward the door, reach for its handle, and open it. What you reveal is extraordinary. The room is dark, but the far wall is dazzlingly illuminated. As your eyes adjust, you realize that projected upon the wall is the hazy image of a street, very like the one you just left. It might even be a photograph of the same street from an earlier age. In the center sits a small Baroque table, upon which is a perplexing contraption that appears to be responsible for the projection. Inspecting it closer, you recognize it as some kind of early camera obscura. The technology looks 19th century at the latest, but probably older. It may even be what was called a magic lantern. The black and white image projected upon the wall of cobbled streets and marionette shops, pastry stalls, and theaters seems to flutter at the edges with a hazy, golden ring, like a gold filigree. The quality of the light shifts almost imperceptibly throughout the image, as though a cloud is passing lazily over the sun in this vision of Karlova Street. Your whole body is humming. You draw nearer to the shining image, almost as though magnetically attracted to it. And as you do, its blacks, whites, and grays begin to soften into glimmering gold. You take another step toward it, and another, and another. And before your eyes, the image deepens, the illusion of dimension upon a flat wall disappearing into a kind of reality. You step forward once more into the haze, through the wall, and beyond the glow of the magic lantern. With the next step, your feet meet cobblestones again. You're back on Karlova Street, and yet it can't be the Karlova Street from which you came. For one, the bustling crowd is gone. Spinning around on the spot, you observe that you are alone. After hours of shoulder-to-shoulder crowds, you breathe in slowly, embracing the quiet and carefree solitude. Another difference, the modern candy shops and souvenir chains are nowhere to be seen. In their place are quiet residences. You notice the elaborate symbols carved above the door to each house, an ornate white swan, a shining key, a trio of violins, and a golden wheel. You wonder if the magic lantern's image sent you backward in time to an era of great kings, mad alchemists, and mysterious legends. The sun has set, but lamplight illuminates the corners and shops that surround you. You take comfort in the silence, the clear skies, and the cool summer night. What a time to explore. You travel in the direction Victorka was leading the tour group. This way to the Charles Bridge, you think. It must be quite a sight with no tourists. You pass through a blackened stone tower carved with elegant relief to reach the bridge. It spans out leagues before you, and far in the distance, beyond its gentle slope, looms another stone tower. Beneath you, the river Vltava glitters, black and silver and symphonic in the full moonlight. On the other side of the bridge, Prague swells like a wave with towering hills. Above it all, Prague Castle and the magnificent Saint Vitus Cathedral are curled like some enormous beast, sleeping, purring, watching over the city. The Charles Bridge itself is lined with dozens of Baroque limestone statues fixed to the balustrade in varying positions. Catholic saints and national heroes gaze down at you as you pass. You can hear the lap and rush of the river below you, and the sound eases your mind. You find a spot to rest against the balustrade, taking in the fragrance of the flowering lindens in the moonlight. Looking back in the direction you came from, you are moved by the sight of the tower gate and the statues silhouetted against the night sky. In the ghostly calm, the statuesque figures almost seem to sway gently to the music of the flowing river. Then, looking over the edge of the bridge, you see another statue mounted just below you on its own tracery-carved pillar. A knight, clad in stone armor, holds a golden sword, which gleams as though charged by the moon glow, reflecting the movement of the water beneath. There's something instinctively familiar about him. And a moment later, you remember that this is Brunswick, the Lion Knight of Bohemia. Angling your head, you can see that around the statue's feet, a stone lion is curled. In the legends, Brunswick was traveling through the forest when he came upon a lion who was under attack by a dragon. In slaying the dragon, Brunswick accidentally cleaved the lion's tail down the middle. But the lion's life was saved, and thereafter he became the knight's beloved companion. The story was the legend behind the national seal of the Czech Republic, a two-tailed lion. The sword in the statue's hand, then, is the one Saint Wenceslas will carry into battle in his country's time of need. Lost in thought of these companion legends, you turn your head just as you perceive subtle motion from below you. You look back at the statue of Brunswick, which stands perfectly still, a trick of the low light and shifting water, you think, as you prepare to move along. But there it is again, a subtle, almost imperceptible movement in the statue's sword arm. You fix your gaze upon Brunswick now and squint as you peer below the armored helmet into the statue's eyes. And there, the eyes blink once, twice, then lock with yours as the statue moves its head. Brunswick gives a slight, deferential nod to you, which you take as a sign of respect. Your heart is caught in your throat as you notice the soft, slow rise and fall of the belly of the sleeping lion. The statue is alive. Brunswick lowers his sword, then slowly, deliberately turns it around so that the handle faces outward. He kneels, holding the sword delicately in his hands, the hilt toward you. After a moment's hesitation, you reach out your hand toward the hilt. A rush of images enters your mind, a fleet of knights at your back, a galloping horse beneath you, the clouds parting to let in the sun. It's just a little bit beyond your reach. You lean forward, stretching your hand out as you slide on your belly against the balustrade, just a little further. Your hand never meets the hilt of the gleaming sword. As you reach and lean against the side of the bridge, the humming sensation returns, and you feel your limbs plucked and pulled as if by golden strings. Like a marionette, an unseen force pulls you upward, away from the water, and up over the bridge, toward the silvery moon. You float, unsupported, as through water, your arms and legs drifting about independently. You gaze down at the bridge beneath you, lit only by moonlight. You can see a solitary figure marching slowly down the length of the bridge. A sword is sheathed at his hip, and behind him a sleepy lion follows, uttering a low grumble as he drags his heavy limbs. In Brunswick's wake, one after another of the statues on the bridge step carefully down from their platforms and join in his contemplative walk. Soon they too are silhouettes against the lamplit city. You wonder if statues all over Prague are coming to life, strolling, reveling, dancing in vacant moonlit squares. Drifting lazily above the scene, you begin to swim across the sky. A warm breeze ripples through your hair as you soar over the river, in which the moon and stars reflect, glittering white against the black water. You coast along a stream of warm air. Before long, you have enough balance and control that you feel as though you've always had the ability to fly. You only needed to take the leap of faith to discover it. A shimmering golden haze seems to blanket the city below you, rising like steam from gas lamps in the alleyways. You soar over red rooftops, copper cupolas, and secret gardens toward the castle on high. You touch down before the stately towers of Saint Vitus Cathedral, which spiral and blend into the black sky. Above its pointed archways and heavy doors, illuminated by lamplight, gilded mosaics depict archangels and religious scenes. Higher still, a delicate rose window, looming gargoyles, intricate Gothic tracery. You kick off from the ground once more and rise into the air, soaring around the towers and buttresses of the cathedral. You admire the stained glass, some traditional and some modern, with Art Nouveau detail and arresting realism. It's not, you realize, that the magic lantern has sent you back in time. Rather, it's transported you to a miraculous version of Prague in which all time is collapsed and the power is yours in the palm of your hand. Finding a safe balcony on which to stand, you touch down again, marveling at the view from this, one of the highest points of elevation in the city of Prague. The golden haze of lamps and lanterns mingles like mist with the silver glow of the moon and starlight, and the river glitters far beneath. Just to the south, the towering Petrine Hill is blanketed with thick trees and vegetation. and an impressive iron tower emerges from the green as though reaching upward to kiss the moon. You can see a lattice of impossibly winding streets and alleyways, a Byzantine network of paths less traveled. Your eyes light on a vast Renaissance revival building that overlooks the opposite side of the river, crowned with gold and adorned with winged statues driving 3-horse chariots. Like the statues of the Charles Bridge, these too spring to life, the horses bounding into the night sky with abandon and soaring off until they disappear into the distant northern horizon. You drink in the superlative beauty of the moonlit city, which seems to generate its own midnight incandescence. As lovely as it is by day, with its outdoor markets and attractions, Prague is, in your estimation, night blooming. Like the statues waking all around you, the city breathes, stirs, ripples in the still of the night. You breathe deeply, inhaling the sweet perfume of lindens carried on the night breeze, and try to align your breath to the subtle sweep of the earth, the rolling hillside. Beneath the Gothic churches, cobbled courtyards, and manicured gardens, the ancient language of the land still resonates like hidden music. Closing your eyes, you imagine what the land must have looked like before the city. You open your eyes and behold a quiet, untouched, natural landscape. Water, trees, hills, rocks. No bridges, no churches, no statues. Instead of atop the cathedral, you now sit upon a craggy bluff that overhangs the Vltava. The only light is the brilliant moon and a dazzling assemblage of stars, more than you've ever seen in the night sky. The only sounds are the lazy lap of water and the hum of crickets. Peace, like you've never known. You bathe in it. The exquisite austerity and quiet of the scene remind you of a story, something you read the last time you visited. It might be history, or legend, or something of both. You search your mind for the details. Her name was Libuše, you recall, a queen who lived a long, long time ago. She was the youngest and wisest of her father's 3 daughters, and gifted with prophecy. After her father's passing, she ruled her people wisely from her seat at Vyšehrad. One day she was moved to walk out upon a rocky cliff overlooking the Vltava. In the golden glow of the sunset, Libuše envisioned a great city one whose glory would touch the stars. She had this city built, nestled in the bend of the river, and gave it the name Praha, from the word for threshold. I see a great city, you utter, your words hanging in the sweet silence, whose glory will touch the stars. Your chest thrums with the ancient vibrations of the earth and the hum of invisible bells, the pluck of golden strings. The river churns and the hills stir as churches, courtyards, gardens, towers, bridges all bloom forth from nothing, shimmering with golden haze. The tallest towers seem to stretch impossibly upward, pricking new pinholes into the starry sky. You rise to your feet and behold Prague in its moonlit splendor, shining and quiet and still, like a plate photograph. As the hum recedes and you get your bearings, the image before you of a city reborn reveals itself as just that, a photograph projected upon the wall of a dark room by a magic lantern. You reach toward it, and your hand meets the cool plaster. You step out, back into the courtyard, and your eyes adjust to the purple twilight. Beyond the archway, you can hear the bustle of tourists who move like a wave toward the Charles Bridge. The lamps across the city are just being lit. You consider rejoining the tour group. Victorka may not have noticed your absence yet. With a final glance at the green door, you head toward the passage to Karlova Street. And yet you feel exhausted from your secret adventure. There's a soft, comfortable bed waiting for you in your apartment. Comfort and rest and solitude. Before leaving the courtyard, with a flicker of inspiration, you kick off from the ground and take flight. Steam and whistle on the evening air. The smell of Paris, bread and wine and city streets still swirls in your senses, dreamlike and uncanny in your fatigued state. The city is a blur behind you now as you approach the platform, avoiding collision with other passengers, mostly serious-looking men in long coats, some families, a couple who might be on their honeymoon by the looks of it. Who knows? Paris was not the success you'd hoped for. No stop on this whirlwind, globe-trotting adventure has been. You feel the rigidity and creak in your muscles with every step. If you could only sleep. That's what you've been after all this time. It's been so long since you slept. The days and nights blend into each other, blurred at the edges and hopelessly entangled. The way cream goes into a cup of coffee, pure and white and separate, then is stirred into the black liquid and sublimated so. The harder you try to stir the other direction, to separate the cream once more, the more seamlessly it dissolves into the coffee. Thus, the harder you try to pull the individual threads of your days, weeks, months of travel and searching, the more entwined each moment becomes with the larger, nebulous thing, the coffee cup of your memory. Somewhere in the tangled threads are flashes and images from your search so far. The smoke-filled rooms and burning sage in New Orleans, the gentle music of a woman's voice, an herbalist and priestess who swore she could brew you a sleeping tea. You vaguely remember the spirals of steam from the cup, the flavor of anise and peppermint and something else, impossible to identify. Then the dingy cabins of a voyage across the Atlantic, traversing the emerald highlands in search of a hidden site of ancient magic, a place you never found, or at least you don't remember finding. Navigating the twists and turns of old London town in pursuit of a secret corridor where it's rumored that a witch concocts a special potion for dream-filled sleep. But nothing came of the search, save for the dizziness and disorientation of the labyrinthine alleyways. Then to Paris to seek out a famed Austrian physician known for pioneering new methods of healing through animal magnetism. Instead, you found his student, an aristocrat fascinated with somnambulism, sleepwalking. He tried to work his methods upon you to induce a sleeping trance, to no avail. But he knew someone in Berlin. At least, those were his last known whereabouts. The man was something of an adventurer with seemingly limitless wealth and ambition. The Comte de Saint-Germain, he was called. This aristocrat insisted that the Count could help you. You see, he's an alchemist, learned in many of the unseen arts. So here you are, at Gare Saint-Lazare, awaiting your boarding announcement. There's an enormous, elegant locomotive, hissing billows of steam at the platform so it appears suspended among swirling clouds, like a dream of steam, your weary mind volunteers. And you smile at the intrusion. You long for a dream of steam. Finally, it's time to board the train, and you cut through a cloud of steam to ascend the steps to the passenger cabins. You pass through the bar car and down the narrow passageways along private compartments, hoping to find an empty one. It's your lucky night, for you find one quickly and snag it before another passenger comes along. Not a sleeper car, but one with seats comfortable enough to pass the hours. Outside, darkness is falling, and a misty rain sprinkles against the windows of the train car. There's a long ride ahead of you, and you're anxious for the train to begin moving, but it takes some time for all the passengers to get settled. You begin writing in your journal. It's more of a log of your travels, all broken into fragments and phrases, keeping track of where you've been, when you've been there, and what you've found. It helps you remember amid all the fatigue and disconnectedness. You jot down what you remember from Paris. Simple words, names, and sketches of your stay. Were you there a week? A month? More? It hardly matters. You remember the marquee and the sleepwalking study. You remember how the light fell in many-hued ribbons through the stained glass at Saint-Chapelle. You remember the darkly sweet fragrance of Bordeaux wines and the taste of flaky French pastry. You look up from the page a moment later, or several moments, or several hours perhaps, and you're startled to meet a second pair of eyes straight across from you in the train compartment. Brown eyes that shine in the dimness. When did the train begin moving, you wonder, as in your periphery the darkened French landscape flies by? When did someone enter your compartment? She's sorry to have frightened you. You seemed so lost in your work that you didn't even notice her come in, and she didn't want to say anything to disturb you. The train was full, you see. This was the only open seat. And you don't have the heart or the energy to protest. You fold away your journal. Your memory is failing to call up any other details anyway. There's silence in the compartment, save for the chugging sound of the train trundling along the tracks. It's soothing, really. Almost soothing enough to fall asleep to. As you stare out the window at the whizzing landscape of French countryside, bathed in pearly moonlight, you sense that the woman's eyes are fixed on you. You can feel the warm intensity of her gaze. You steal a glance back at her to confirm. She's dressed all in black. She looks well off, you suppose, with a black lace veil pulled back over her head, a high neckline, and a curious necklace at her collarbone. It's an oval locket with a gilded, decorative frame around the watercolor illustration of an eye. You've never seen its like before. It's strange in the first place to see her traveling alone. Then again, you suppose you're traveling alone? And what's really so strange about that? But for all the eccentricity of her dress and presence, you feel comfortable sharing the compartment with her. She radiates an inviting sense of serenity and safety. Trust, perhaps. After a while, she speaks again. This time, it's to comment on your appearance, ragged and disheveled. You've been on the rails, ships, and roads for too long, and your clothing is fraying at the seams. You only brought so many items with you. After all, you thought you'd be home by now. But there's a kindness in her voice, compassion and insight. She sees how exhausted you are. Her accent is neither French nor German as far as you can tell. Maybe Belgian. Your mind is too waterlogged to decipher it and understand her words. So you refocus your energy. She's introducing herself. Her name is Viviane, and she might be able to help you. You're skeptical. You don't tell her all the details of your fruitless quest so far, but suffice it to say, you've sought out sleep remedies from the most recognized minds across the world, from magic and science alike. You're off to Berlin to meet a famous alchemist as a last resort. No herb, no tincture, no treatment, no process has yet done the trick. You fear you'll never sleep again. Viviane's eyes are soft and sensitive. She understands. But then, with these hours to pass along the railway, why not give her method a chance? She can lull anyone to sleep within 10 seconds. Or so she says. You don't answer straight away. It's odd. isn't it? An uncanny coincidence that a stranger should take the last empty seat on a train in your compartment. And this stranger should claim to possess the very thing you're looking for. Sometimes you wonder if all of this journey has been a long and winding dream. If you've sleepwalked across oceans and continents, and fatigue has only followed you to the realm of dreams. Now you smile again at the things your mind likes to call up in moments of uncertainty. Who was it who had the idea of a realm of dreams? A metaphysical plane we visit in our sleep, leaving our bodies behind. Another world. What a notion. And now, suddenly, it doesn't seem a strange coincidence, this Vivienne and her mysterious method. It doesn't seem a coincidence at all, more of a convergence. There's a reason she's here, why she gravitated to your car. She's here to help you. So you agree. Why not give her method a chance? Let her try. Before we begin, she says, make sure you're comfortable. You settle, roll your shoulders, and cozy up in your seat. And find a natural, nourishing breath. Don't force it. Just flow with your breath. Breathe all the way into the belly. Be aware of your surroundings, the points of contact between your body and the surface beneath you. Your heels, your legs, your back, your arms, your shoulders, your neck, the back of your head. Feel the gentle movement of the train and listen to the sound of the engine. The train on the tracks. And once you're comfortable, grounded, and settled in your breath, she'll begin. Are you ready? Vivienne gestures to the locket around her neck and instructs you to focus on the illustration of the eye. She begins. You feel your eyes slide out of focus into a fuzzy, hazy contentment. First, Vivian encourages you to choose a setting to visualize, like a staircase or a cave or a ladder or even a spectrum of color, something with multiple levels. And visualize yourself at the top level. She will count down from 10. With each number, you'll sink down another level in your chosen setting, down a step on the staircase, a rung on the ladder, or into a wash of another hue's light. Do you have your image? Good. 10. Breathe. Prepare to sink down a level. On your exhale, feel yourself descend. 9. Deep breaths. Sink down once more. 8. The light changes, dims with every level you descend. 7. Into the cave, down the side of the mountain. 6. Another step down. 5. Sinking down into the healing darkness. 4. Feel your mind and body descend, shutting down unnecessary thoughts or distractions. 3. Sink lower, deeper down. 2. On the exhale, descend. 1. Open air and cool breeze on your skin. A feeling of lightness, ease, effortlessness. The sound of vastness. The smell of amber and gardenia. Your vision returns as your eyes slowly focus. Where am I? You hear yourself say. You're barefoot. Your feet stand on something soft as down. You look down. It's more than a few moments before you realize that it's the surface of a cloud upon which you stand. That's odd, isn't it? All around you, pure sunset or sunrise, the one with fingers rosy, you think, rose gold dawn and dusk at once, vermilion silk sky and blush gilt edges. The air is perfumed with unseen flowers. When you try to move, it's as though you tread through calm waters. It's pleasant, though, that little resistance in the air, that feeling of weightless relief. You hear your name. You're not sure from which direction it comes, but you know the voice. You turn all around to locate the speaker. There's nothing but sky on all sides, until you turn again and see something that was not there before. In the distance, a palace. And now more is materializing. Formlessness into solidity and detail. A road beneath your feet replaces the wisps of vapor, winds its way toward the far-off palace. Were you not aboard a train just a moment ago? Or a lifetime ago? The sound of the steam engine seems to whistle from someplace far away. And high above you, in the limitless vastness of it all, a train winds like a black serpent around clouds and stars. Your name again on the wind. Only you know who is speaking now and where she is. Viviane is steps ahead on the road. She no longer wears black, but ivory silk. Her feet are bare. She gestures for you to keep up. What is this place? You wonder aloud. A field of poppies rolls outward as if upon your breath, blanketing a newly formed hillside off the path. Viviane breezes onward, and you hurry to keep pace. But you find yourself distracted many times along the road to the palace. Your jaw drops as you watch a herd of silver white unicorns galloping over a distant plain. It's cocked at such an angle they seem to run straight upward into the sky. Marvelous and solid and sparkling. And you run to a small and singing waterfall just off the road, realizing your sudden thirst. You cup your hands to drink from it, but at your touch, the water splits into a great swarm of butterflies. You lean over the edge of the waterfall to glimpse the expanse of sky beneath you, and it becomes clear that all of this slowly materializing world, its magic and creatures and natural wonders, ride upon the back of an enormous turtle, hurtling through the infinite sky aboard this gentle giant. All around you, it seems wonders are forming. You can see into the mouth of a cave. Something sparkles deep inside. Gold, or crystals, or rare metal ore. A lone crane flies overhead, singing the most achingly beautiful song. A forest springs up surrounding the palace, and its trees seem to hum with musical energy. You hurry to catch up to Vivienne, who continues up the road. She takes little notice of the marvels about her, but when you reach her, you catch a smile upon her face. You finally reach the palace gate, and she welcomes you graciously to her home. The gates are fashioned of some pearlescent metal you've never seen before. Vines of silky sweet jasmine climb the bars. The gate swings wide to allow you and Vivienne inside the palace grounds. You climb the steps and pass through the enormous, gilded doorway. Candlelight, high ceilings and gilt frames, and a long, seemingly endless corridor stretching out into eternity. The hall is lined with artworks, surreal and magnificently alluring, some almost recognizable as great works by the master artists, but ever so slightly distorted from what you remember. And doors, each door unique and distinct. What is this place? You ask again, hoping for an answer this time. And Vivienne does answer. You've been here many times, she says, but you always forget. You couldn't possibly, you protest, a land of unicorns and turtle gods and flying trains. It's the land of dreams, she explains. It's the place where dreams come to life and where they live on, even after you return to your waking life. What a notion. Before you know it, she's pacing down the hallway. You hurry to catch her passing a blue door carved with the image of a splendid tree, and a green door in the shape of a perfect circle. You must know more. Vivian tells you she's the steward of the realm. She watches over all the creations of all dreamers everywhere. She preserves the halls of dreams. She catalogs them. She cares for them. She's been called a queen, but she's more of an archivist, a tender of dreams. She came to find you, having missed your presence for some time. Your imagination, the creatures and characters of your dreams have been asking about you. So this, you wonder, this palace and the poppies and the caves, these are all the pieces of your dreams, your own personal reverie. Vivian smiles. You've made quite a dream for yourself. And the doors, you ask. See for yourself. You approach a door on the right. It's painted a deep purple hue, and at the level where a different door might have a brass knocker, there's a glass or crystal sphere perfectly embedded in the wood. You try to look through the crystal with your eye, but the image beyond it is too distorted to make out. Beyond flickering lights and subtle movement, you swing the door open to reveal a dimly lit room, candles and a fireplace, strewn with cushions and armchairs and small tables laden with tarot cards and teacups. You look upward, but instead of a ceiling, you see only sky, moon, and stars. You vaguely recall sitting at one of those tables, deciphering messages in your tea leaves. But that was a dream. One door reveals a mist-shrouded hillside, a circle of stones lit by a will of the wisps. Another door leads to a vast, impossible library. Another opens onto a deserted castle hall, at the center of which is a round table. One more opens into endless space, swirling with the stardust of a colorful nebula. With each door, each realm revealed, something stirs within you. Some mythic yearning or deep, enlivening familiarity. Each mysterious setting feels like yours, a place you once called home. There's an emotion you can't readily describe, something like homesickness or nostalgia, a vague longing, and at the same time a quiet sense of peace. You come to a point where you know what will lie behind the door before you open it, as though a whole other life is returning to you piece by piece. Your heart is very, very full. You continue down the hallway. Every time you think you've reached its end, a new length of corridor materializes as the candelabras spring to life. Viviane is no longer by your side. She might have gone to tend to another dreamer or to rescue another sleepless soul. You're not worried. This is your dream after all, and you'll surely meet again. But you slow down. You could go on like this forever, opening doors, unveiling realms, revisiting past dreams. Or you could stop moving for once, settle down, give yourself time and space and grace, and let a new dream come to you, wash over you, restore you. You close your eyes and center your breath and slow yourself down. And when you open them, you see that the stretch of corridor before you now leads down a set of stairs. Candles light the way still. At the bottom of the steps, there's a new door. It's nondescript for now. No clue as to what lies beyond it. You take a step down and another step, with each step sinking down a level, deeper and deeper down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. You turn the knob and push open the door with ease. You step through. The sun is barely breaking in the east over a swell of hills and glittering spires. You traveled through the night, feeling with every inch you drew closer to the city its magnetic allure. Now it's in your sights, The castle, a sprawling golden citadel atop a towering crest. The exhaustion you feel from the lengthy journey seems to be swept into a crescendo of joy and adrenaline. Your heart feels drawn, enchanted toward the castle. As you wait for the sun's auric rays to reach you and warm your face, you soldier on, pulling your traveling cloak about your shoulders. A subtle dampness accompanies the dim of the morning, giving you a little shiver. The chestnut gelding who pulls your cart grows wearier with every step. Just a little further, you assure him. Oats and apples and a warm stable await. You carry inside your cloak a scroll of parchment loosely rolled. Your fixation on its presence creates a physical awareness, almost a kind of warmth at your chest. This scroll is your key into the city. The Emperor Rudolph has issued an imperial summons. Scrolls like yours were distributed, passed, and received by people all across the world. Word spread like fire across your country, and for a long time, it was the only topic of gossip in your scholarly community. For the emperor made in this summons a most unusual and unprecedented request. He called far and wide for the most gifted natural philosophers, astronomers, magicians, sorcerers, and alchemists to join him at his royal court in Prague and serve at his pleasure. The emperor, known to be an eccentric, a collector, and a connoisseur of the mysterious and arcane, was looking for something, some undiscovered knowledge, and he wanted the brightest, most discerning minds of the age to uncover that knowledge for him. When the scroll first fell into your hands, you were certain it was a forgery, likely a ploy by local officials to root out practitioners of unsavory magic and wizardry. For many years, you've toiled and studied in the shadows under the guise of studying philosophy toward your true ends. Alchemists, like yourself, are generally unwelcome, frowned upon across the continent. But on a pilgrimage to a nearby city, you encountered many who knew of the emperor's call and could vouch for its authenticity. An emissary of the emperor had, it seems, come through the city to declare his intentions. Not long after, you packed your few earthly possessions, including your astronomical instruments, a few hand-scribed copies of important alchemical texts, and your small store of oils and spirits, into a rickety cart and prepared your trusty horse for the long journey. The trip, on horseback, has taken several days. You passed one evening at a candlelit inn on the King's Road called the Green Door. Savoring a hot meal and hearty ale, you overheard rumors of strange happenings in the back streets of Prague. Claims of a necromancer who called up spirits and angels in his magic mirror, of a stargazer who made outrageous prophecies based on the movement of the moon. You mulled these rumors over in your mind by the crackling fire as night closed over the road. The next night, overcome with exhaustion and unable to find a suitable place to stay, you set up a small camp underneath the stars and overhanging pinewood forest. Just before you closed your eyes, soothed by the constant hum of crickets and songs of night birds, a shooting star raced overhead. In your dreams swirled an image of Prague, gilded and pulsing, an image surely constructed of engravings and written descriptions, with your imagination filling in the blanks. For you've never seen the great city in person until now. On the final night of your journey, drawn endlessly onward by quivering anticipation and adrenaline, you forswore rest. Only a bit further, only a few miles more. The auriferous crown of sun that swells over the hillside now nourishes your body and soul more than any food or drink could. Your heart soars. As in your dreams, the city in the valley seems to pulse like the beat of a drum or a heartbeat. Something about it, this vision of a city gauzy and golden, is alive indeed. What awaits you in the heart of the city, you wonder? What will you find in the emperor's court? Your final approach takes you up the sloping crest of the castle hill. Your belongings rattle and the cartwheels creak with the strain, but you're almost there. The forests are thinning, and the scattered homes and inns give way to more densely inhabited settlements. Little cottages sit quiet in the early morning, their residents likely still sleeping. A tavern must be preparing the day's offerings as the smell of herbs travels on spirals of smoke from its chimney. And at last, simultaneously weary and wired, you reach the stone gate that marks the entrance to Prague's magnificent castle, flanked by statues of Hercules. Fortified by imposing limestone walls, the castle complex is vast and sprawling, extending far beyond your eye line. You can see the colossal tower of the Cathedral of Saint Vitus, a dazzling architectural marvel, unfinished as it may be. A row of king's guard stand sentinel at the gate. Though you know you have secure entry, you still feel eager to impress. You sit up straight behind the reins, feeling for the scroll of parchment. You present the summons to the lead guard, who inspects it closely. For a moment, your old fear of it being a forgery resurges. But after a few moments, the guard rolls the parchment up once more, hands it back to you, and stands aside. His fellows move to open the gates. The iron creaks and your heart pounds as your horse-drawn cart rolls through the gates. You can hear them closing noisily behind you. The gelding's hooves sound sharp on the gray cobblestone, a stark contrast to the soft grass and gravelly roads you've traveled thus far. The sky is a rosy pink in the blossoming dawn, and a gossamer edge falls on the structures of the complex. Cool blue shadows counter, shifting on the undersides and stones. You had rather expected a burst of human energy beyond the castle's gates. You're surprised to find it just as vacant and sleepy as the road. But there's much to savor about the sweetness of solitude, even after many days of travel and only the company of your horse, or the brief acquaintance of the denizens of the green door. In the shimmering blush of the morning, this beautiful place is yours, alone, to explore and relish. The atmosphere hums and quivers like drops of dew upon flower petals. Past the Gothic marvel of Saint Vitus Cathedral, you discover the entrance to the imperial stables. Many handsome stallions, surely the steeds of the emperor, tower over you. An assortment of workhorses, young and old, occupy further stalls. These must belong to those who live and work here in the castle. Here you encounter the first people since the royal guard, friendly stable hands who accept your horse warmly. You stay to ensure that the horse is watered and fed before giving him a grateful stroke on the neck. These stable hands agree to look after your belongings while you search for lodging. For a handful of coins, they even agree to deliver your cart when you do. Upon leaving the stable, you notice that the walls of the complex are now echoing with sound. The castle must be waking up. And indeed, as you pass through courtyards and corridors, the whole place is springing to life. A line of rigid guards pass by you, unflinching. They must be headed to relieve the night guards at the gate. A woman sings to herself as she washes the cobblestones at the entrance to an elaborate rotunda. A steady stream of people enter from the direction of the gate, wearing hopeful expressions. These must be subjects seeking an audience with the emperor. At the end of a winding, cobbled path through the various buildings, a gnarled tree on a raised platform catches your eye. As you draw closer, you realize that it marks the entrance to the royal gardens. The garden is sunken, a level down upon the hill, so that you must descend a small, limestone stair to enter it. From here, you can see much of the city nestled in the valley below. The Vltava River sparkles, silver and slate blue in the morning light, beneath the distant Charles Bridge. The palace garden is fragrant with bright florals, elegant and formal like the illustrations of classical French gardens you've seen in books. It's framed by clean-cut topiary. A vibrant sunburst of yellow lilies are the first to catch your eye. Then you see delicate, white ladybells and voluptuous beech rose, English hawthorn, and sandy iris, each impeccably placed, precise, and perfect. Kneeling in the soft grass beyond a sway of gladiolas, a young woman is silently praying. Her eyes are just open, but she seems to take no notice of your presence. There's something very sweet and peaceful about her. Her ivory dress falls over her knees like the drooping petals of the snowdrop. It's as though she's a feature of the garden itself. You must resist losing hours here in the garden. Your pet love of horticulture cannot distract you from answering the king's summons, finding your place here at his court. But then, as if it materialized there from the force of your thoughts, you find a small brass instrument angled sharply on a thin stand. It's a telescope, drawn as though by an unseen force, magnetic and irresistible. You glide toward it. It's a beautiful instrument, delicate and clearly crafted with loving care. The way its perfectly balanced straight lines taper from its lens to the fragile, narrow eyepiece. You touch the object, if only to feel the substantial weight of it against your fingers. Then, unable to resist, you bend to peer into the eyepiece. The morning star will have set by now, but there's a half moon still visible in the lightening sky. You swivel the telescope to find it in the pale blue morning. Though it's the same moon that washed the glade where you rested a few nights ago, the same moon that bathed the road through your all-night travel, it feels changed somehow. As you contemplate the grooves and craters in the moon's unsteady surface, you feel a gentle breeze at your back. The flush of air displaced by a body. someone is standing just behind you. With this intuition, you are unstartled to feel a hand fall tenderly upon your shoulder. You slowly rise to stand and face the stranger, whose eyes are sparkling and inscrutable. He's middle-aged, you think, and carries himself with poise. But his dress suggests he's not of any elevated status. Not royal, but distinguished, it seems. He speaks first. Alchemist, he says. It's a question, teased with a smirk. You fumble in your cloak for the scroll. Yes, you respond, an alchemist, reporting for the emperor's summons. The stranger unravels your scroll and regards it casually. The guards, he reveals, alerted him to your arrival. He was eager to find you, but never imagined he'd come upon you toying with his instruments. You scramble to apologize, for you are only admiring the craftsmanship. But the stranger chuckles and claps you on the back, leading you toward the garden gate. Out of the corner of your eye, you glimpse the praying young woman who appears to be observing your interaction with some interest. As you walk, the stranger introduces himself as Johannes. He offers friendly nods to the people you pass, and he points out the various architectural wonders around you. The royal palace is sophisticated and fine. A mass of people now wait outside the entrance to be granted their audience. A rounded Romanesque church, Johannes identifies it as the Basilica of Saint George, stands solid and austere against more intricate, embellished structures. You recall the legend of Saint George, who traveled to Cyllene to face a fearsome dragon who was terrorizing the townsfolk. The people offered their livestock to appease the dragon, but it seemed the beast's hunger was insatiable. When St. George arrived, he rescued the king's daughter from being sacrificed to the monster, and he slew the dragon with his lance. The valiant, generous St. George refused all the gold offered to him by the king, instead giving the riches to the poor and needy. The castle complex is almost overwhelming in its size and liveliness. It's like a city of its own, on a sacred hill behind fortified walls. Johannes explains that where the mammoth cathedral of Saint Vitus now stands, there was once a simple chapel. And before that, and now he lowers his voice so only you can hear him, that spot on the hill was a place of divine energy, venerated by the ancient people who came to this land. A place of worship for the pagan god Svantovit, the four-headed patron of abundance and the harvest. You quietly marvel at this, not only at the idea that a servant of the emperor would speak of such clandestine things, but also at the tragic beauty of the march of history. In your mind, the image of ancient people robed in regalia befitting of worship or festivity, gathered atop an unblemished hill. How their rituals might not look so different from those practiced in the cathedral today, and yet their religion was snuffed out. How reverence for Svanto Vit might have morphed over time into Svati Vit, Saint Vitus. There is loss and sorrow in the ever-present procession of time. Things are lost, dropped by one generation, but they may be picked up in whatever form by the next. And as you pass by the worshippers entering St. George's Basilica, you recognize that today, in Johannes' surreptitious story, and in the practice you hope to bring to court, many lost, secret things have returned to the hill. That is the practice of alchemy, after all. The rolling back of layers of time and mystery to find that elusive spark of creation, to recreate the moment of creation, to unlock the mysteries of the universe, or of what some might call God. Beside the basilica lies another cobbled corridor, narrow against the castle's fortifications. Johannes guides you through, then ushers you into a tiny alleyway on the left. This, he explains, will be your home if you choose to work under the emperor. Before you can even take in the sight, your nostrils fill with a melange of unidentifiable odors. It's familiar though, and somewhere in the mix is the smell of your own alchemical laboratory. Experiments are at work here. Then, a smile of pure amusement creeps across your face. For built directly into the castle walls is a row of miniature houses, all pressed against one another like little people standing shoulder to shoulder. The houses are painted in bright colors, a brilliant blue, a striking cherry red, green, and gold. Directly across the cobbled street is another nearly identical row of charming, squat residences. Toy-like in their size and childish color, each has a perfectly square window framing a tiny door. Red shingled rooftops on every one. This, Johannes explains, is the Golden Lane, home to the emperor's alchemists, magicians, and philosophers. As it happens, there's a residence available and it's yours if you can demonstrate your potential to the emperor. Johannes leads you down the alley. Windows of some of the tiny houses fly open as the residents of the Golden Lane pop their heads out, craning their necks to see the newcomer go by. In some cases, with the opening of the window comes a billow of smoke or fumes. Spirals of white and gray and dusky crimson meet and mingle in the air. The faces that peer at you are some of the most eccentric fellows you've seen. There's a man with a pure white beard, so long that it falls over the windowsill nearly to the cobbled ground. His face is so deeply lined that he looks like he's carved from an ancient tree. A woman with olive skin and black curls wears a collar of precious jewels and pearls around her neck, her silhouette framed and clouded by smoke. You wonder how long these practitioners have resided here, whether they were asked to prove their mettle before the emperor. Indeed, there are still many mysteries about the emperor's interest in assembling such a kaleidoscope of heretics. You still struggle to reconcile the idea that your discipline, practiced underground elsewhere across the continent, is sanctioned and celebrated by the Holy Roman Emperor here in Prague. This Golden Lane, certainly so named for the alchemical ambition to transmute base metals into gold, is a wonder of the world in your eyes. A safe place to perform the secretive, occult experiments that have bound you in fascination for nearly your entire life. It's a mystery, yes, but somehow the image of golden haze of the morning upon Prague's spires, the quiet stroll in the royal garden, and the sensory experience of discovering the Golden Lane, all these impressions seem to swirl together into a liquid music in the air and vibrating in the bones of the earth, radiating from this sacred hill like an ancient calling. You are pulled from your thoughts as Johannes stops in front of the door of one miniature house, slant-roofed and chartreuse. Its windows are darkened, indicating vacancy. Johannes pushes the door open and gestures for you to step inside. You have to stoop just a little to pass under the lintel, but once inside, the ceilings are comfortably high. Johannes lights a lantern by the door to illuminate the dim interior. It's modest and sparsely furnished. Only a table and some chairs, plus a desk with many tiny drawers, and a humble bed in the corner. To you, however, it's splendid. A private place to carry out your study with the protections and fortifications of the castle. An oasis you've sought for so many years. with the splendor of Prague's jewel of a castle at your doorstep. You can already imagine twilight walks in the garden, or stargazing from the top of the Saint Vitus bell tower, all as you continue your great work, the experiments and discoveries that bring you closer each day to revelation. You are lost in the fantasy for a few moments before you remember that your stay is conditional. Johannes informs you that you'll have until sundown to prepare a demonstration for the emperor, one that will prove you a worthy addition to his court of alchemists. You'll need your belongings, your books, and instruments. Johannes will send for them to be brought over at once. You ask what the emperor's intentions are, why he's inviting otherwise ostracized practitioners to court. What is he looking for? Or what might impress him? The sideways smile, which never left Johannes's face, twists puckishly. It's almost as though you know what he will say moments before he says it. Somewhere in your mind, you've known ever since you received the summons. The emperor wants the philosopher's stone. With this, Johannes leaves you. He expects your belongings will be delivered within the space of half an hour. Till then, body and mind buzzing with questions and excitement, you occupy the time by exploring the residence. You find that the desk drawers are already filled with useful materials, from quills and parchment to select ingredients that will serve your experiments. But try as you might to distract yourself from the task at hand, it keeps surfacing in your mind. The philosopher's stone, of course. Perhaps the road you've traveled these many years in the trade has only been the road to Prague, to the emperor's court. The philosopher's stone is the Magnum Opus, the great work of the alchemist, a legendary substance believed to carry magical properties. Of course, many seek it for its purported ability to transform any metal into gold, thus granting access to untold riches. Or for the fact that it's a critical component of the elixir of life, which rejuvenates the drinker and prolongs life. Many have sought an end to suffering and even freedom from death through the pursuit of the philosopher's stone. But it's more than a tool to unlock immortality or to spoil the holder with treasure. It is, as you believe, the universal principle, the Alchemist, the indivisible element from which all things derive, the one, undivided, and a key to unlocking many, many hidden things. When your belongings arrive, you hand over a purse of coins to the stable hands you met earlier this morning. You begin to dig through your bags for essential items. First, a text, the text, the emerald tablet. This will be the basis of your demonstration to the emperor. You riffle through the yellowed pages of your copy set in Latin by a printer from Nuremberg. A single line, which you hold by heart, leaps from the page. Quod est inferius, est sicut quod est superius. That which is below is like that which is above. As above, so below. The emerald tablet was first transcribed, as it goes in the legends, from carvings in a mysterious green stone that fell to earth. The scribes recognized that it held secrets to the creation of the universe, and so translated it into coded language to be deciphered by alchemists, lest the forbidden knowledge fall into the wrong hands. You do not take for granted that the text, printed and copied, made it to your hands at all. The work of your life has been the deciphering of the emerald tablet's complex coded messages. You believe the recipe for the philosopher's stone lies within this text, obscured beneath layers of obfuscation and puzzlery. You are not quite there, though, and now you curse the short hours of the day, for perhaps if time slowed down just a little, you might receive that critical knowledge to sweetly unlock the final pieces. What wonders could you produce in a demonstration for the emperor if you only had more time? But there is something else you've discovered between the coded lines of the emerald tablet. Something flashy, impressive, and tangible. It may not be the sophisticated arcana to which you aspire, but it may do the trick of convincing the emperor to sponsor your continued experiments. You flip through the pages to find what you're looking for, and when you do, you set about preparing to meet the emperor. The hours twirl by in a cloud of candlelit vapor and mist. With each passing minute, it's as if you can feel the earth's rotation beneath your feet and the magnetism of the planetary dance in the heavens above. A clock ticks, resounding endlessly in your mind. By the time dusk falls upon the golden lane, casting a cool azure and purple glow through your frosted window, your muscles ache and your eyes water. Oh, how you long to rest, having not so much as sat since your long overnight journey. But at the same time, you feel compelled and energized by the task before you. Johannes returns to deliver you to the royal palace. The time has come to earn your place at the emperor's court among his magicians and alchemists and philosophers. The golden lane is lit by softly glowing lanterns, and you admire the way the evening light tempers the vibrant pigments of the house's facades. Church bells are ringing from the cathedral and the basilica in deep, resonant tones that hum in your bones and clatter, reverberating off the walls of the castle. Somewhere beyond the walls, below the hill, comes the pealing of infinite church bells of all possible pitches and frequencies, singing faintly from the city in the valley. In your hours of toil, the castle must have reached its energetic crescendo before the visitors, admirers, and workers began to disperse. Now, only a few remain on your walk to the palace as the castle resets to the quiet solitude you observed in the early dawn. Johannes leads you up the marble steps to the palace and into a grand entrance hall. Here is truly the abode of a king, you think, observing the brilliant ornamentation of the hall. A portrait hangs unlike any you've ever seen of a bearded man whose anatomy is entirely constructed of harvest fruits and vegetables. A crown of grapes and wheat and berries and pears adorns the subject's brow. Johannes notices your captivation with the painting, which he explains is a depiction of the emperor as Vertumnus, the Roman god of nature and the changing seasons. Indeed, the hall exhibits a staggering collection of artworks and curiosities. If this is what sits on display in a mere entrance hall, what marvels must reside in the emperor's private collection, you think? You admire an opalescent vessel, a massive dish of agate with ornamental carved handles. It's of a size worthy of a lavish, divine banquet. And the word Christo is engraved in its surface. Johannes tells you this vessel is thought to be the Holy Grail itself. You're drawn, lastly, to a rough, uncut stone of deep forest green, its edges jagged and natural. It's the size of a clenched fist and rests solitary upon a Romanesque platform. You ask Johannes if the gem is an emerald, but he says no. It's Voltavine, Moldavite, a precious stone found only in this part of the world, in special mines. For it comes not from the earth, but from the heavens. Long, long ago, a stone fell from the skies, causing a great impact on the surface of the earth. And from that stone, smaller projectiles were formed and were embedded in the ground. Your heart pounds. If this is true, you think, then perhaps the stories of the Emerald Tablet are more than just legends. A stone that fell from the sky. As above, so below. You wonder if this green gem holds the key to the Magnum Opus. You feel an insatiable longing for the stone. But Johannes is already striding toward a pair of heavy oaken doors, hardly noticing that you've fallen behind, enthralled with a seemingly minor curiosity. You hurry to catch up. At last you make your way to the emperor's throne room, where he's waiting for you, surrounded by onlookers in their finery. The emperor himself is smaller, less regal looking than you might have imagined him. Surely decked in jewels and furs, he's impressive, but there's something about him that looks so very ordinary, like a child dressing up in adult's clothing. Atop his head is the crown of the Holy Roman Empire and his family's powerful dynasty. It's dazzling gold and encrusted with spectacular jewels and pearls. But the most eye-catching thing in the throne room is not the regal finery, the architectural grandeur, or the shining gemstones of the king's regalia. Rather, your eyes fall upon a colorful bird that sits perched on the emperor's shoulder, with a crown of golden feathers on its head and a striking red breast. It's like no creature you've ever seen, save in medieval bestiaries. It looks to have stepped out of myth. And as you scan the throne room, observing the faces of the emperor's companions, you recognize a young woman in an ivory dress, the one who was praying in the gardens at sunrise. Johannes announces you and makes clear your intention to join the court of alchemists at the emperor's summons. The emperor, clearly excited to witness another alchemical demonstration, urges you to begin. You've brought a small inventory with you, and there's an ornate, long table before the throne at which you're invited to work. Hands shaking, you remove your items one by one from a leather bag, vial after vial, a small cast iron cauldron, the emerald tablet, and one by one you remove the stoppers from the vials. A flourish of your hands here and there helps with the impression, with the magical associations. What the emperor does not know, at least as far as you can tell, is that alchemy is not magic. Alchemy is natural philosophy. For all its occult associations, all its codes, its myths, and its arcana, it is simply the revelation of how things work. It is nature decoded, laid bare. One by one, you empty the vials in precise measurements into the cauldron. If you do everything right, the results will be tangible and the process will be spectacular. A reaction in the air with a wave of the hand and the right combination of gesture and chemical, you extinguish all the candles in the room simultaneously. Now, you work in darkness by just enough light from the shining moon in the tall windows to see that the emperor's eyes are wide and sparkling. Darkness shrouds your hands. Some of your moves are tricks, deceptions, but they are the doorways to the great work that goes unseen. Just as glittering gold and elixirs of immortality are mere consolation prizes in the never-ending quest for knowledge, your concoction catches the moon, which ripples in liquid smoke on the surface of the cauldron. The white of the moon reflected splits into a spectrum of wondrous color, which plays upon your face and hands to the emperor's delight. And now, with darkness as a cloak upon your shoulders, comes the part you didn't plan for, couldn't prepare for, the part you didn't know you'd try until you set foot in the entrance hall. You retrieve the Moldavite, the rough, natural stone from your coat, where you secreted it off its platform while Johannes was distracted. You place it in the solution where it dissolves with a satisfying susurrus. A puff of gray smoke erupts from the cauldron, then slowly shifts from ashen to pure white, and from pure white to a pale yellow, and from pale yellow to a deep gold. Then the smoke clears. The emperor is leaning forward in his throne. The onlookers are hanging on your every motion. The woman from the garden looks enthralled. The liquid is gone from the cauldron. When he takes the pyramid from your hands, you can see it reflected in his dark, shining eyes, catching glints of gold and green and white and even crimson. You can tell that, like you, he has never seen anything the like of it before. So much for fool's gold, you think, quietly wishing you could bring the treasure with you to explore it and discover its secrets. This is only the beginning, you promise the emperor, seeing the hungry look in his eyes. He sends you back to your new home, the chartreuse dollhouse on the Golden Lane, with jugs of mead and enough delicious foods to last a month. A waning moon bathes the vacant castle's walls, churches, and courtyards in its tender glow. Your thoughts race on the walk back to the Golden Lane. You are alight with discovery, feeling as though you've found something you've long sought after, and yet you are filled to bursting with more questions than ever. The answers to the universe's mysteries feel in reach, graspable, tangible, and yet, as you move closer to them, they appear to open into gaping chasms of undiscovered country. It is so very, very much to hold. And you are so very, very tired. The alley, lined with its toy-like little houses, looks so inviting when awash in moonlight. As you glide toward your new residence, you savor the idea that tomorrow you will awake in Prague for the first time in this castle replete with possibility. You take in a delicious supper, the first time you've eaten all day, and allow the haze of exhaustion to fall over your body in waves. Then you extinguish the candle at the table and climb into the little bed in the corner. The opal moon glow throws a little square of light through the window onto the floor. You close your eyes. You sink into the mattress, feeling how your muscles seem to melt into the points of contact, slowly being pulled down toward the earth in the release of all tension. You feel the earth's rotation ever so slow beneath you. You feel as steady as your heartbeat, the motions of the stars and planets above you. Somewhere in this land you've yet to explore, embedded in the ground, is more of that green mineral, that fallen star You imagine yourself, perhaps even tomorrow, plumbing the depths of caves in the hillside to find the veins of emerald. You wonder if you'll feel the presence of the divine, of the gods, the ancient people of this country, once venerated on this sacred hill. Eyes closed, body soft, and mind slowing, slowing, slowing down. You at last release yourself from the need to prove. You are safe. You are enough. You are protected. And at last, in a land that sings with pealing bells and ancient magic, you are free to be yourself. And you are limitless.